was not quite a month past my 25th birthday when I received a phone call that told me that my dad had died from a heart attack. The next 2 weeks were a blur, and I don't remember everything that was said. He sang in a 180-man barbershop chorus. He sang in weddings. He sang in funerals. So I'm sure someone said to us, maybe God needed another angel in the choir. I know someone told us that perhaps something was coming down the road in life that would be too much for him to bear, so God took him before he had to face that, which is a way of one of the things we might say is God doesn't give us more than we can handle. I'm certain also that someone at some point, maybe my mom, said, God has a plan. This must be part of the plan. All of these things that we say, I suspect there are a couple of reasons that we say them. When it's someone else's pain that we're confronted with, it is tough to know what to say, and it is hard to just be together in silence because we get really uncomfortable with that. So I suspect we say these sorts of things because they come quickly to us, they seem to make sense, and we hope that they provide a little bit of comfort. But sometimes we say them, especially that God has a plan, one, when it's our own pain and struggle. And I suspect we say that because we don't like to think that there is random chaos that is in the world. We want to believe that God is in control. If there is a death, if there is pain, if there is suffering, we want all of that to have meaning. And if we feel like it somehow is part of some plan that God is bringing into action, then it can have meaning. But I personally find all of these sorts of statements a bit troublesome. Because while they may give me comfort to think that God has a plan and that as a 25-year-old losing my father is part of that plan, I'm not sure it's that comforting for a 25-year-old father to lose a son and to believe that that had to happen for God's reconciliation of the creation to come along. In that way, we can start to say these things simply and easily because they bring us some level of comfort, but we may not realize what it does to the faith of other people. I preached a sermon once that said, I didn't believe God has a plan, but that God has a vision. And that vision is of the reconciliation of all of creation that comes with us in the resurrection. And in that sermon, I suggested that God does not need babies to die for God's vision to come to life. That God does not need people to take their own lives for God's vision to come to fruition. And on the way out of worship that day, a woman in her late 70s stopped in tears and said very quietly to me, Pastor, I held my dying baby in my arms. And my son took his own life. And in the brief conversation that we had there amidst her tears, it seemed to me that for most of her adult life, she had been on a journey understanding that God caused these things in her life to happen. So that when we hear the story of Easter and we hear talk of a loving God and a gracious God and a God of steadfast love and a God of glory and wonder, that's not the God she understood because she had been told, whether it was by someone saying God has a plan or God needed an angel in the choir, whatever those things are, she had been taught and had learned that her children had to die for God to be able to bring creation to this new and wonderful place. It's dangerous when we say things like that, and I suspect we say that because we don't want to enter into the deep darkness of the pain and struggle that we feel. Today we heard the words that Jesus spoke from the cross, not in the Gospel of John, but one of the other Gospels. In Psalm 22, he quoted it. He said, my God, why have you forsaken me? It is not a simple phrase that Jesus spoke of comfort. They are words of abandonment. And on this Good Friday, as we hear those words, I really do believe they are a gift to us to show us what it means to lament. Lamentation is something that we largely do not do as people. Rather than enter deeply into the pain and lament it, we tend to skirt around it and find nice little things to try to help us avoid it. But if you hear the words, again, of this psalm, it starts, my God, why have you forsaken me? I cry by day, and by night. I am a worm and not human, scorned by others. I am poured out like water. My bones are all out of joints. My mouth is dried up like a potsherd. Dogs are all around me. My hands and feet are shriveled. These are not tidy words. These are words of someone who is feeling empty, has nothing left to offer, feeling attacked, feeling beat down, feeling that death is even near. That is what lamentation sounds like when we enter deeply into that pain. And on this Good Friday where we follow Jesus to the cross, I believe these words are a gift to us to begin to teach us what it looks like to follow Jesus to that place, to really open ourselves up to the pain in the world that is around us. Because all of us at times feel empty, dried up, feel like our bones are all out of joint because life is just not going the way that we had hoped or had planned. We want to be whole and well. Lamentation gives us these words. The psalm gives us those sorts of words that we can cry out to God, because God can take it. If Jesus can say, my God, why have you forsaken me?" I suspect we can as well. But the great gift of these words in this psalm is that lamentation is not just the sorrow, because the psalmist also says, "Yet you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. Yet it was you who took me from the womb. You kept me safe on my mother's breast. From you comes my praise in the great congregation. My vows I will pay before those who fear him." Amidst all of the sad words, the psalmist also has hope, has trust that God is not yet done. Good Friday is the perfect day to read a psalm like this, because we are in that space of the crucifixion and not yet to Easter, but we know that Easter is coming. So we can speak those words of lamentation, but yet know that we can have hope, that God keeps God's promises and that God's reconciliation is coming, that God's vision that the world will be whole and we will all be well is still on its way. My grandmother lost her oldest son. My dad was the fourth of 5 boys. He was 36 years old, the oldest, when he died from a heart attack. I didn't really know my grandma until she was probably in her late 60s and 70s. But I had a sense that she had a bit of a gloom about her at times because she had lost a child. My grandpa had a stroke when they were getting close to 80. He lost the movement of the right half of his body and he lost his ability to speak. At that point, my grandma was a kind of little bitty old lady. And when his rehab allowance at the rehab facility ran out, she took him home. She got him in and out of bed every day. They had to move into a little apartment further into town that had less carpet and emergency poles so that she would be more able to take care of him. She bathed him, got him on and off the toilet, fed him, shaved him, cleaned him up when he dribbled food down himself. She did that for 2 years. They were married 62 years. I didn't tell that story when I do premarital counseling because that's what it means to be in it for good and for bad as you commit to marriage. When my dad died, my uncle didn't want my grandma to hear it from someone else, so he went late in the evening, knocked on the door, and when he opened the door, the first words she said were, "Which one was it?" Now she had lost 2 sons. And then, towards the end of that 2 years, she fell one day and broke her wrist. That night, I truly believe, my grandpa decided that he was too much of a burden and somehow managed to will himself to a stroke that took his life. And for 7 or 8 years then, my grandma was in a nursing home, lonely. I expect that was probably the darkest time of her life. Having lost the guy that had been with her every day for 62 years, they never spent a day apart. Having lost her boys, sitting in this place, most of the people she had known at that point had passed on. My uncles would go see her. Most of us were far away. The church didn't come see her all that often. And in those moments, I expect she was in that darkest place that she could be. When she finally passed, my uncle called me and said, "Grandma has died." We had a little short conversation. At the end of it, he said, "I think she lost her faith." Why do you think that? He said, well, she had a Bible next to her bed. I went and I looked at it to the passages that she clearly had been most recently reading, and they were full of despair. They were full of sadness. And in that, he thought perhaps that she lost her faith. But maybe, in those darkest hours, she did not lose her faith, but she found in the words of her faith words to speak what she was feeling, words to speak to God the darkness that she was experiencing. And not just those words of despair and lament, but right beside them, the words of hope, the words of promise that God was